The TOC Chiltern Railways takes its name from the Chiltern Hills as the company's trains pass through them. Today we will be showing two driver's eye views. The first will be over the company's second main route from Aylesbury Vale Parkway to London Marylebone, mostly sharing the tracks with London Underground's Metropolitan line between Amersham and Harrow-on-the-Hill. Local services to London Marylebone are every hour and normally formed of 2 or 3 car class 165 turbo DMUs. Signalling commences under the control of Marylebone IECC, or Integrated Electronic Control Centre. The freight line from Quainton Road and Calvert converges here. All trains that continue to those destinations must obtain a single line token, which drivers must collect from a small metal cabin located on the goods loop that we shall see further on. This was a joint line between the Great Central and Metropolitan Railways, sharing the same tracks as far as Harrow-on-the-Hill. The joint line of the Met GCR company began at Quainton Road, with the former diverging to both Brill and Verney Junction. Both locations were in the middle of green fields, with few houses to its name. The services beyond Aylesbury were a failure, with London Transport curtailing passenger trains to Verney Junction in July 1936, while the services to Brill ceased a year earlier in November 1935. This section was only used by freight trains to reach a waste disposal yard at Calvert. However, on the 14th of December 2008, the line extended to a new park and ride facility at Aylesbury Vale. The cost of improving the signalling and track to the existing line was at £8.17 million, with a further £2.8 million invested by Chiltern Railways and £1 million by Buckinghamshire County Council.
Is Aylesbury. Please ensure that you take all your personal belongings with you when leaving the train. If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text British Transport Police on 61016. We'll sort it. See it, say it, sort it.
Now we pass one of Chiltern Railway's main depots, servicing the Turbos, Clubmans and Turbostars. The first station in Aylesbury was separate to our station and built by the London and Birmingham Railway in 1839. The station was known as Aylesbury High Street and a single line used to terminate in just the one platform. The station we arrive at today was the second station, opened by the Wycombe Railway in 1863, but became a through station 5 years later when the Aylesbury and Buckingham Railway opened from the north. In 1892, when the Metropolitan Railway opened to here from Chalfont Road, their trains terminated in a separate station adjacent to this one and called Brook Street. It was only in use for 2 years, and all services were then diverted to this station. A station building befitting the county town of Buckinghamshire, with a large forecourt and taxi rank. Aylesbury Station was even more important with the arrival of the GCR in 1899, with the long-distance services from the north. Sadly, the GCR main line duplicated other lines, especially the Midland Main Line and, to a lesser extent, the West Coast Main Line. The beaching axe fell on the Great Central Main Line, closing the route north of Aylesbury to Rugby in 1966, while the last section to Nottingham followed in 1969. The closure of the GCR was the largest single closure of the beaching era, and one of the most controversial. The single line from Princes Risborough, which we will be taking later, now diverges to the right. We pass milepost 38, measured naturally enough from Marylebone. Aylesbury is the county town of Buckinghamshire. The town is home to the Roald Dahl Children's Gallery, David Tugwell's house on Watermead, and the Waterside Theatre. The population is 58,000, but the urban area rises to 71,000. This part of the Metropolitan and Great Central Joint Line was opened all the way to Aylesbury from Chalfont and Latimer in September 1892. This is Stoke Mandeville. The village is located 3 miles south of the county town, with a population of 1,460 at the last count. The nearby Stoke Mandeville Hospital has the largest spinal injuries ward in Europe and is best known internationally as the birthplace of the Paralympic Games. This was instituted by Sir Ludwig Guttmann in 1948, evolving to become the first Paralympic Games in Rome in 1960. That is the sound of the driver's vigilance device, which only sounds if the driver has not used any of the controls in the last 60 seconds. The audible warning is there to ensure the driver is still alive and in control of the train, and requires he or she to lift their foot off the foot pedal to confirm this. The driver needs to do this in a quick time of 3 to 5 seconds. If they do not, the train's brakes will be applied automatically. Maximum line speed on the route to Aylesbury is 75 miles an hour, the Class 165's maximum. There are at least 2 trains an hour from London to Aylesbury along this section of line. One terminates at the latter, while the other continues to Aylesbury Vale Parkway. The market town of Wendover has a population since the 2011 census of 7,000. The station also serves the smaller villages of Wendover Dean and Aylesbury. The modern footbridge, complete with lifts, was installed here in 2013, replacing the original bridge that dated from 1892, though it is good to see that it still survives at the country end of the station, now in use as a public footpath. This bridge takes us under a roundabout with the A413. Construction work here marks the spot where High Speed 2 will cross our path on an overbridge. It's hard to believe that this line used to be an important intercity route with destinations in the Midlands such as Sheffield and Leicester. The Great Central Main Line was built by the entrepreneur Sir Edward Watkin with the aim to run as a fast trunk route from the North and East Midlands to London and the south of England. It was never financially successful at first, but was reprieved by Sam Fay, and although the line was planned for long-distance passenger services, many trains also transported a number of goods, notably coal was the most lucrative source. We are now arriving at Great Missenden. The station has been here since day one and was also served by Metropolitan railway services up until 1961. Trains used to run from Baker Street to Brill and Verney Junction. This delightful small village is affluent and has approximately 2,000 residents living here, with the River Misbourne flowing close by. this footpath crossing, we leave the Network Rail controlled area and into London Underground territory. The signalling is currently operated from signal boxes located at Amersham, Rickmansworth and Harrow. This is the only place in the United Kingdom where a Network Rail train operating company comes under the control of a rapid transit signalling system. Therefore, to conform to the LUL signalling practices, the 165s have been fitted with tripcocks, preventing signals being passed while the signal is at danger. You'll notice that many of the LED signals have changed to the conventional bulb light currently employed on the Underground. Whistle boards are different too. These are displayed in red or blue and will say whistle rather than the usual W. The two sidings west of the station turn back many of the Metropolitan line services. We now get to travel over the 4-rail system. The station has 3 platforms. The platform we arrive at is used by both southbound Chiltern and Metropolitan trains. The platform to our right is used by terminating Metropolitan services, while the platform to our far right is predominantly for all northbound Chiltern services, though some Metropolitan trains turn back in that platform also. LUL trains have terminated here at Amersham ever since the electrification reached here from Rickmansworth in 1961. The station building was constructed in the metro suburban villa style, being known as Amersham and Chesham Boys between 1922 and 1937. Notice the blue numbered boards as we depart Amersham. These indicate train lengths for the S-Dock trains on the Metropolitan line. Should the passenger alarm be activated while the train is departing the station, the blue numbered boards tell the driver how many carriages are still within the platform vicinity, and they can decide to stop or move on to the next station. You will also notice the unelectrified road to our left, which can only be accessed by Chiltern services reversing back to Aylesbury during times of disruption or engineering works. Single line branch from Chesham now comes alongside us to the left. Incidentally, it was the first line to have opened before our line, the Metropolitan Railway having extended northwards from Rickmansworth on the 8th of July 1889. Chalfont and Latimer, the station being in a good location for intending passengers to alight and explore the Chess Valley. Until 1915, this station was known as Chalfont Road, the village of Latimer being over a mile's distance from here. We are travelling through the area of Metroland, a name that was coined in the 20th century by the Met's marketing department to promote modern homes in the beautiful countryside of Buckinghamshire, Hertfordshire and Middlesex. The railway company had been in a privileged position, being allowed to retain surplus land. From 1919, this was developed for housing by the nominally independent Metropolitan Railway Country Estates Limited. The spirit of Metroland was evoked by the poet Sir John Betjeman, recalling this in his autobiography, Summoned by Bells, released in 1960, that Metroland beckoned us out to lanes in beachy bucks. There are many new signals awaiting to be commissioned, but for the time being, they have been covered over. Automatic train operation is expected to be all over the Metropolitan line at some point in the future, but with the Chiltern trains unable to operate with ATO, they still need to be signalled as normal. Metropolitan S-Stop train departs Chorleywood for Amersham. The trains first entered service on the Met in 2009 to replace the A60 and A62 stop trains, which had been used on the Underground between 1960 and 2012. Chorleywood was originally just two separate words. A suffix was installed to the name in 1915 called Chorleywood and Cheneys, lasting until 1934, by which time the name had merged to become one. Notice the signal box, no longer in railway use but protected. pass underneath the M25, London's orbital motorway. This is a banner repeater signal. It tells the driver that the signal obscured from their sight around the bend is displaying a green or yellow signal. This and the other banner repeater signal on the approach to Rickmansworth station are the only two on the underground system. Overlooking Rickmansworth station is the signal box to our right and the old water tower to our left. Rickmansworth was the extremity of the Metropolitan's electrification in 1925, and this was where the traction was changed from the vintage electric locos on the Metropolitan to steam trains being provided by the LNER. The Metropolitan services continued with steam power to Amersham and Aylesbury until 1961, when the final section of the route was electrified to Amersham, eliminating the need for steam power over the line. The British rail trains, however, did continue north beyond Aylesbury to destinations such as Leicester and Sheffield until 1966. This stretch from Pinner to Rickmansworth was opened on the first day of September 1887. Straight ahead is the Rickmansworth carriage sidings. The double track diverging to the left is part of a triangular junction with the Watford branch, despite the fact that this side of the triangle is mainly used by empty rolling stock to access the carriage sidings at Rickmansworth. The third side, or the passenger use side of the Watford Triangle, converges here just before we cross over the Grand Union Canal. The 2.5 mile long line opened in 1925 at the same time as the electrification reached Rickmansworth, and these days sees 4 trains an hour run along the route, with one intermediate station at Croxley. are now approaching Moor Park. The station lies in the grandly named Moor Park estate, with large houses that depict the Metroland idyll. The station was opened in 1910 as Sandy Lodge, after the nearby Sandy Lodge golf course, changing the name to Moor Park in 1950. The residents of the area were up in arms and strongly opposed to the quadrupling of the railway and rebuilding of the station that was completed in 1962. The fast Metropolitan tracks are used in the peak hours only, so Chiltern services take advantage of them for most of the day. Northwood Station is the first in the Greater London area. At least 8 trains an hour call at the intermediate stations between Harrow and Moor Park to Watford, Amersham and Chesham. Iron Bridge crosses the A404 Rickmansworth Road. Hills, the most recent addition to the Metropolitan, dating from the 13th of November 1933. There were once 2 stations that served Pinner, the other opened in 1842, located on the West Coast Main Line, though since 1920 that station has been renamed as Hatch End and is served by London Overground services on the Watford DC line. On the 25th of May 1885, the line was projected north of Harrow to Pinner, and later the railway was strengthened to 4 tracks amidst heavy protest by local residents. Construction work started in 1956 and was completed in 1962. Also, in 1925, the line was electrified to Rickmansworth, where the steam locos of the Metropolitan coupled up to the coaches to continue the train to Amersham and Aylesbury, etc. The Uxbridge branch emerges by means of a burrowing junction. It opened in 1904 and runs via Eastcote, Ruislip and Ickenham, also sharing tracks with the Piccadilly tube line from Rayners Lane.
Is Harrow-on-the-Hill. Passengers for London Underground services, please change here. Oyster card users are reminded to touch out on the card readers before leaving the station.
Arriving at Harrow-on-the-Hill, once the northernmost terminus of the Metropolitan Railway on the 2nd of August 1880. Chiltern Railway services use platforms 1 and 2, while platforms 3 to 6 are used exclusively by the Metropolitan. Harrow is still a major junction for the Metropolitan, with most of its routes diverging here. This marks the end of London Underground's territory and control, and we now are back under Network Rail's authorisation, with Marylebone IECC signalling us for the remainder of our journey. Now the Metropolitan is split into fast and slow lines. Northwick Park opened in 1923 and had the suffix Kenton after it. It was dropped in 1937, no doubt to avoid confusion with passengers of the other station called Kenton on the Bakerloo line, which incidentally is only a few hundred yards away. The train crosses the Bakerloo and London Overground lines and the 4 tracks of the West Coast Main Line. Surprisingly, the island platform at Preston Road wasn't opened with the line in 1880, but in 1908, a few years after the line was electrified to Uxbridge. The station was opened as a halt, known as Preston Road Halt for Uxenden and Kenton, serving the local clay pigeon shooting site for the Olympic Games. The Jubilee line now appears from another burrowing junction that dates from 1939, taking the line a further 5 miles to Stanmore. This was the last branch to be built by the Metropolitan Railway as a private company, opening in December 1932, just 7 months before all of London Underground's buses, trams, tubes and trolley buses came under the umbrella of the London Passenger Transport Board. Wembley Park. The station was opened 14 years after the Metropolitan opened through here in 1894. This is Neasden LUL Depot, the main servicing facility for the Metropolitan's S-stock fleet, as well as stabling some of the Jubilee Line's 1996 stock. At Neasden South Junction, we join the Chiltern Main Line proper and travel over it into London Marylebone. The Metropolitan provides an express service from Wembley Park to Finchley Road, leaving the 5 intermediate stations at Neasden, Dollis Hill, Willesden Green, Kilburn and West Hampstead to be served exclusively by the Jubilee, formerly the Stanmore branch of the Bakerloo line. Dollis Hill opened in 1909. We pass around the back of Willesden Green. The station was the northern terminus of the Metropolitan Railway in 1879 until the line opened to Harrow a year later. The combined 6 tracks cross the North London line. This is West Hampstead. The final approach to Marylebone takes us away from the underground tracks at Finchley Road as we enter a couple of long tunnels towards the terminus. The first is Hampstead Tunnel. Briefly at South Hampstead, the line crosses the West Coast Main Line again. St John's Wood Tunnel is the longest on the line. It was built with the cut and cover method and had to be excavated beneath Lord's Cricket Ground. To satisfy local objectors, Sir Edward Watkin, who was the former chairman of the Manchester, Sheffield and Lincolnshire Railway, pioneer to the Great Central Railway, had to construct the tunnel between the September of 1896 to the May of 1897.
is London Marylebone. This train terminates here. All change. Please ensure that you take all your personal belongings with you when leaving the train. Please mind the gap between the train and the platform when leaving the train. Oyster card users are reminded to touch out of the card readers before leaving the station. If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text British Transport Police 61016. We'll sort it. See it, say it, sort it.
London Marylebone, the southern terminus of the former Great Central Main Line, opening on the 15th of March 1899, one of the last major railways to open in Britain for 100 years. The station once linked the capital with many important cities in the north, as mentioned, Leicester, Sheffield and even Manchester. There are connections with London Underground's Bakerloo line, which arrived here in 1907 with the name of Great Central. It's also hard to believe, with the reduction of services in the 1980s, that Marylebone Station could have closed altogether and been made into a bus terminal. Luckily, it was saved in 1993 with the introduction of long-distance services to Birmingham and Kidderminster. It's now time to take a trip down the short single-line branch from Princes Risborough to Aylesbury at a distance of 7 miles. Lying on the Chiltern Main Line, a number of fast Chiltern Railway services come roaring through here. Princes Risborough was once the confluence of 5 different trunk routes. The large GWR-built signal box dating from 1904 still stands as a listed structure. The maximum line speed on the single line is 40 miles an hour. This line to Aylesbury was built by the Wycombe Railway in 1863. As the company originated from the Great Western Main Line at Maidenhead, the route had been laid with Isambard Kingdom Brunel's 7-foot broad gauge, who took over the workings of the Wycombe Railway in 1867. In just 1 week, in 1870, the whole line was converted to standard gauge and incorporated into the newly formed Great Western and Great Central Joint Railway in 1906. This is the only stretch of line on the Chiltern network where trains encounter jointed track. first station on the branch is Monks Risborough, opened in 1929 as a halt by the GWR and called Monks Risborough and Whiteleaf Halt. The Whiteleaf Cross itself is seen from the station, carved into the chalk hill. Its origins are obscure, but it was mentioned as an antiquity by Francis Wise in 1742, but no earlier references have been found. This line sees an hourly service in each direction. Notice the bridges. They have been constructed with the provision of double track, which was never laid.
Is Little Kimble.
We are now arriving at Little Kimble. This station opened in 1872, 9 years after the rest of the line, serving a few houses on the main road. The British Royal Train stopped here in 1998 when the G8 summit was held in Birmingham. The country's leaders' wives, such as Hillary Clinton and Cherry Blair, alighted here for Chequers, the official residence for the British Prime Ministers. Notice the yellow milepost. Although one might think these are measured from Marylebone, they are actually measured from Paddington and the original Wycombe Railway route via Maidenhead, Bourne End and High Wycombe. The AWS sounds for the level crossing warning board, just seen here to our left. Here we get differential speed limits. The bottom applies to us and the top for loco haul trains. The low speed limit applies to the half barrier level crossing at Marsh Lane, which the road itself runs into the centre of Stoke Mandeville. Either side of the line, we can see more construction work associated with HS2. Since filming, a brand new bridge has been constructed for the single line to cross over the track bed of HS2, which in the future is supposed to provide a faster rail route between London and Birmingham. The scheme has been criticised heavily over the years, especially with the devastation of the countryside it will pass through. Housing surrounds the line, meaning we are back in Aylesbury. South Aylesbury Halt is the only closed station on our entire route, again opened by the GWR, this time in 1933, but closing in 1967.
Is Aylesbury. This train terminates here. All change. Please ensure that you take all your personal belongings with you when leaving the train. If you see something that doesn't look right, speak to staff or text British Transport Police on 61016. We'll sort it. See it, say it, sorted.
Once again, we approach Aylesbury Station. There is a short turnaround time for our train, which will now return back to London Marylebone.